I wonder what's in here. My name's Mark. Let's talk rugby. Okay, so this package that I got is the reason why this video is a week late, because I've been waiting to get this and I'm very excited to get it open. Let me see if I can actually manage to open the bloody thing. But yeah, I made a promise prior to the final and I delivered on the promise. Yeah, let me see, we're almost there. We're almost inside. Okay, yeah, I can see something nice in here, alright. Let me get it out. It's well wrapped, I'll tell you that. But yeah, this video would have been up a week ago, review of the URC season, but I wanted to have this for it because I thought it was fitting. Got more wrapping here. Okay, put that over there. Okay, so here we are. This is what we got. We got a nice Glasgow Warriors shirt, the URC champions. I promised in my preview that I would get the shirt of the team that won the final, and that's what I'm going to do, or that's what I did. I didn't get the home jersey because the home jersey was completely sold out anywhere I looked for it, which I think is amazing for Glasgow because it means that they're making a lot more money on shirts than they have in recent years. So I think that's brilliant. But I like this one anyway. I like the color. So one thing I'll say is I got this. I first of all tried to get it from the official Glasgow store because when I'm buying stuff like that, I want to support the team itself, that and have them get the most kind of percentage of the sale into their coffers as possible. But they were completely sold out and everything, even though they had like the home jersey and the away jersey at like I think a 50% discount or something, but all sold out. So it was kind of weird, like probably could have just sold them all at regular price, didn't need to discount them to get sold out. So I went to the rugby shop instead. Now, I'm very happy that I was able to get the shirt from them. So, but there's one thing that I will say about it is that when I got it, I'm pretty sure that I paid UK VAT. And then when it was going through customs in Ireland, I got charged Irish VAT. So I got double charge on VAT. So I'm going to have to look into how to claim some of that back. Hopefully I can. And then because of that as well, because whatever way the VAT wasn't dealt with properly by them, it meant that I also got charged a fee of €3.50 for processing that VAT, the Irish VAT as well. So it cost me a lot more money than I thought it was going to cost. I'm still happy with the shirt, but because of that, if you're shopping from Ireland, I would not recommend the rugby shop because you might run into the same issue as well, having to pay. I think all in all it was 20 something euros that I had to pay on top of already buying the shirt itself, paying UK VAT and paying shipping as well. Had to pay an extra 20 something euros on top of that. So that was a bit of a sting in the tail, but happy with the shirt. And now through a little bit of magic editing, we're going to be wearing it in a second. And there we go. We got our sweet new shirt on. So again, really happy with the shirt itself. Nice feel, wearing it. And you don't notice it so much on the TV really when you're watching, but I really like the red bit up here as well. It kind of offsets the light blue as well. I like blue. Almost all my stuff that I don't wear for work is blue or connected with blue somehow. But I did also say that I'm hoping to get the Bulls shirt as a combined birthday Christmas gift as well. So I'm gonna have to get into my wife's ear about that and see if we can make that happen. So, but what I will say is, if anybody has any recommendations for where I can source a shirt like for the Bulls or Stormers or whoever, or even like for the teams that are outside of Ireland, so Italian teams, Welsh, Scottish teams as well, like Edinburgh. I probably eventually want to get the Glasgow first team shirt as well, because I really like that black one. But if you do have recommendations that don't do stuff, like the Rugby Shop did, let me know, and then I'll check those out. So we're going to get into season review. So this review, it's not going to be hugely in depth. I could go in depth and spend like an hour or more on each team going through stats and stuff like that. We're not going to do that. We're just going to go kind of high level stuff on this, look at how the team went through the season, highlights, lowlights, etc., and kind of where they finished up as well. And then a little bit about, how I felt their season went, and maybe, looking forward to next year too. Okay, so we're going to start with Zebre, who they finished 16th in the table. And in Europe, they made the quarterfinal of the Challenge Cup, where they lost 47-6 to the Sharks. In their Shield, which is the Scottish/Italian Shield, they finished fourth. And then the record overall for the season was 1-1, drew 1, and lost 16. Highlights for them. First up, 12 points to 10 win against the Sharks in round 4. First win for them for 2 seasons. We had Priscantelli and Trula as well with long range kicks. So all the points coming from the boot there, and able to hold out for a decent win there, a real kind of morale boosting one. And then the next round then, 22 points to all against Cardiff in round 5, and they get an 85th minute converted try to draw as well. So it was really the two best performances really back to back there. But also they had 5 games where they were doing within 1 score. So that was Ulster, Benetton, Edinburgh at home, and then Ospreys and Dragons away. So you can see Zebre definitely getting more competitive. Lowlights of the season: they lost 61-19 to the Lions away in round 6, then 54-16 to Connacht in round 14, and then they lost at home 40 points to 9 against Glasgow in round 15, and then also 40 points to 14 away to Edinburgh in round 16. So end of the season not as good as the start of the season for them, but they are, as I said, they are getting more competitive. They recruited well before last season. Let's see how the recruitment goes for next season as well. And the question mark is, are there going to be more improvement from these guys next year as well? Okay, so let's have a look at Zebre's, how they went through the season. So you can see there in the first couple of rounds, not doing too badly in terms of they were picking up points, they were keeping up there, in between 9th and 13th, especially, they get that win in round 4 and then the draw in round 5 as well, boosted them up. But then after that, then it's kind of a steady decline, and they hold for a bit roundabout kind of 13th, 14th. But then in the last few rounds, then they end up on the foot of the table, and they just can't get themselves off there. They just needed to get a couple more match points, and it would have finished ahead of the Dragons, but it wasn't to be for them. And speaking of the Dragons are next. So Dragons, they finished in 15th place in the Challenge Cup. They were in Pool 1. They finished 5th, so they didn't make the knockout stages of that. They finished 4th in the Welsh Shield, and the record was 3 wins, 0 draws, and 15 losses. Highlights for them: 20 points to 5 win against the Ospreys in round 5, an Ospreys team who had a brilliant season. Then 13 points to 12 win against the Scarlets in round 9, and a 20 points to 13 win against Zebre in round 13. And against the Ospreys, they had Robertson, Dyer with some tries there. Prothero did get a red card, which kind of helped with them. Then against the Scarlets, Wainwright with a try, and then Evans getting the rest of the points from the tee. Against Zebre, then you had Owen, Rosser, and D all with tries in that one as well. Lowlights for them were 69 points to 14 away defeat to the Sharks in round 6, then 49-24 against the Lions in round 7. So that, tour to South Africa really not going well for them. And then Cardiff, 55 points to 21 away in round 8. So that little, period there, 173 points conceded across 3 rounds, really did, kind of set their season, in a downward trajectory, and they never really recovered from that. We will have a look at, how their season actually went. So we can see here, highest that they placed was 12th, and that was in round 1, and then steadily dropping down, then kind of have that little bit of a fight. First of all, the fight initially was between themselves and Sharks about who was going to be bottom of the table, but then Zebre dropped down as well, and then Dragons just about kept ahead of them by a single point for the rest of the season. So for them, very poor middle part of the season, and really did kind of put the kibosh on any kind of progress that they were trying to make. And it feels like they need to step things up next year. Yes, there are, constraints in terms of the budget for them and all the Welsh regions, but you can see some of the other Welsh regions are finding a way to still get some progress despite that. So we need to see, I think, more from the Dragons next year. Next then are the Sharks. They finished in 14th place in Europe. Obviously the Challenge Cup champions, beating Gloucester 36 points to 22 in that final. Buthelezi, Fassi and Mapimpi with tries, and then Masuku, lots of points from the boot for him as well. Finished 4th in their Shield and a record of 4 wins, no draws and 14 losses. Highlights in the URC were 22-12 win against Ulster in round 12. Buthelezi, Cater and Mbanambi with the tries for them. And then a 23 points to 13 win against Edinburgh. And that was when they kind of had a bit of a mini revival. And it was around the time when they were doing so well in Europe too. In that one, Fassi and Buthelezi with the tries. And then obviously the other highlight is the fact that they won the Challenge Cup this year as well. Now we're not going to go too much into Europe in this video, because this is kind of a URC season review, but we have to mention, the biggest point of their season as well there. We can't just ignore it. Lowlights then, that 12 points to 10 away defeat to Zebre in round 4, then a 40 points to 10 defeat against the Lions in round 11, and a 36 points to 14 reversal against Cardiff in round 17 as well. So they're at home for that one. So that was, a big defeat for them. So poor season in the league, but performances weren't as bad as their position would say. And I talked about that, through the season as well. They, ended the season though as the first South African team to win one of those major European trophies in the Challenge Cup. And now next year it's about how are they going to juggle the URC and the Champions Cup, and can they get out of their pool as well? So that's going to be interesting for them. But huge congratulations to the Sharks on winning, the Challenge Cup as well. Absolutely brilliant from them. URC performance not so good. Okay, so let's have a look at the Sharks' position through the year. So you can see there early on they're kind of going between their highest is 14, but then they drop to the bottom of the league. They have a bit of resurgence, drop down to the bottom of the league again. Then they have that resurgence about the time when they're going through the knockout stages in Europe, and then things drop off then in the last 2 rounds to them. So never really got to the point where, last year we saw them put in that run to get into the playoffs, but never really looked like they were ever going to do that. It was always, from pretty much midway through the season, you knew they were going to finish outside the playoffs. And I think they did right to prioritize the Challenge Cup because of that. Okay, next then on to the Scarlets. So Scarlets finished in 13th place. They won their last 2 games to pull, away from that kind of bottom group as well. And in Europe, they, Challenge Cup 6th in Pool 3, so didn't progress beyond the pool stages. In the Shield, they finished 2nd in the Welsh Shield. record was 5 wins, 0 draws and 13 losses. Highlights for them: 31-25 win against Cardiff in round 3. Craig, McNichol, Davies and Fafita with the tries there and a bonus point win. Then did the double over Cardiff, 29 points to 23 against Cardiff away in round 7. Davies at the double, Craig again, Evans and McNichol in there too. So really good record against Cardiff this year at least. And then a 16 points to 13 against a Benetton team that had a great season in round 12. Swart with the try and Costello then with the rest of the points from the boot. Lowlights for them: 63 points to 21 drubbing against the Bulls in round 1. Really didn't set their season up very well. Round 2 as well, 52 points to 7 against the Stormers. So, having to start away in South Africa really was not ideal for the Scarlets. And then round 5, 54 points to 5 drubbing against Leinster as well. So we'll have a look at their, let me pull it up here, at their position through the season. So you see, like, after those 2 drubbings, they're rock bottom of the table. Then they start climbed up as high as 12th place, then fell back down again. For round 6, they were bottom of the table. Then they start climbing again. Then they had kind of a duel going on between themselves and the Sharks, and they finally finished above the Sharks there, right in the last game basically helped them to pip them there into 13th place. Okay, so mixed season obviously for the Scarlets. They did finish well. They produced some really good tries and some decent play as well all the way through the season, but often drifting out of games. Set piece not where it probably should be, but you can see there's potential there for next season. But the question is, can they unlock it? Okay, next then we have Cardiff finishing 12th place. In Europe, they were in the Champions Cup. They finished 6th in Pool 2 with no wins, and it really felt like that they were out of their depth in that. And I think it was the fact that this season was the last season where we had the winner of a Shield going into the Champions Cup was a good thing. Now you have to qualify either the way the Sharks did, by winning the Challenge Cup or the Champions Cup, or by league position. So, I think it means that teams that do qualify will be, in a position to compete a little bit better than Cardiff did this year. In their Shield, they finished 3rd. Their record was 4 wins, 1 draw and 13 losses. Highlights for them: 31 points to 24 win against the Stormers in round 6. We had Littlerick last minute try, then De Beer's boot as well, helping them to that win. Then a 55 points to 21 win against the Dragons in round 8. You had Carey, Botham and Williams all with braces, 9 tries altogether in that one. Absolutely emphatic win. And that was when you could see all those young players were really, coming to the fore. Then 36 points to 14 away win to the Sharks in round 17. A nice bounce at the end of the season for them. Lawrence, Donnell, Halaholo, Botham and Grady all getting tries in that one. Then lowlights for them: 22 points all against Zebre away in round 5. 20 points to 33 loss at home to Leinster in round 11, and then a 34 points to 13 loss against the Lions in round 16. But I think one of the main things for this Cardiff team was that they had 10 defeats by 1 score, within 1 score this year. So they're not that far away from getting a few more wins on the board that would have put them in the mix there for the playoffs. So, we'll have to see how they progress that next year. But let's have a look at how they did this season. So you can see, starting out initially, they're up as high as 10th place. Then they drop back down to 13th and then climb back up to 11th. And then they spend much of the season in 12th place, have a little bit of dip and then back up to 12th place at the finish there, and that win, away win against the Sharks really helped them in achieving that. So these guys have got a young squad with some really good, signs at the start of the season. As I said, did fall away a little bit in the second half of the season, but they did have that bounce. And, that Sharks away win, you wonder, is that going to spur them on to better things next season? Next time, we have Connacht. Position for them was 11th in Europe. They were in the Challenge Cup quarterfinal. They lost to Benetton 39 points to 24. And then they dropped down from the Champions Cup after finishing 5th in their pool. In the Shield then, they finished 4th in the Irish Shield. Record was 9 wins, 0 draws and 9 losses. Highlights for them, a 30.4 points to 26 win against Glasgow in round 2 against the eventual champions. Kilgannon with a double. I thought, he looked really good at points during the season. And then, Ulster, 22 points to 20 in round 3. Kilgannon with a late try to seal that one. And then 22 points to 9 win against Munster in round 9. Hanrahan with 5 penalties. And so Ainger with a late try as well in that one. And Connacht won 4 the first 5 games. So they started the season really well. Lowlights though, 52 points to 27 away defeat to the Bulls in round 6. Then 38 points to 14 loss at the Sports Ground in round 12 against the Lions. And, they had Intella Bakanye sent off after just 17 minutes, but Connacht looked like they were the team that were a man down for the entirety of that game. Then a 47 points to 12 defeat against Munster away in round 16 as well. So end of the season nowhere near as good as the start of the season. As we look at their graph as well for the season, you see there, like after round 3, they're actually top of the table, and then from that it's just steady decline all the way down to 11th. Then they have a bit of a bounce to get themselves, back up to 7th, just dipping in, into the playoff places. Then they drop out again. Then in round 15, they're back up there in 6th place, but fall away in the last 3 or 4 rounds to ultimately miss out on the playoffs. And it really was, you can see that there. It just shows you up and down season for them. Far too inconsistent, I felt. Very unpredictable. Obviously got a new coaching team in there, even though they were obviously part of the previous regime, but still, when it's a new head coach in there, even if he's been there for years, he still has different ideas. He wants to put his stamp on it, and that's going to take time. Need more consistent performances next year, or they're going to have to get used, I think, to missing out on the playoffs, unless you need that consistency to get you in that position, so that when it becomes tight at the end there, you've more chance of pulling it through. Okay, next time we have Edinburgh. Their finished position was 10th in Europe. They were in the Challenge Cup quarterfinal defeat, 36 points to 30 against the Sharks, but acquitted themselves pretty well there. Finished 3rd in their Shield, which is the Scottish/Italian Shield. Record 11 wins and 7 defeats. So I think the first team with a positive win ratio of the teams that we looked at so far. And they're the only team as well, I think, with double figure wins to miss out on the playoffs. Highlights for them, 31 points to 23 against the Bulls in round 5. Ashman with a double, Van der Merwe, Mata as well. It was a bit crazy though. There was 2 yellows and 1 red for I think it was Kotze for the Bulls, and then 1 yellow for Edinburgh as well. So plenty of cards in that game, but all the cards were deserved. Then a 19 points to 14 win against Glasgow in round 9. Late Van der Merwe try and a Healy penalty in that one. Then a 43 points to 18 win against the Scarlets in round 14, and 5 second half tries in a really good comeback win in that one. Lowlights, 43 points to 21 against the Stormers in round 12, 23 points to 13 against the Sharks in round 13, and the real disappointment was that 31 points to 6 defeat against Benetton away in round 18, where it was pretty much a playoff between the two of them. they knew that the winner was going to get through. They did have a period in the game where it looked like maybe they were going to come back at Benetton, but things just didn't go their way. And then eventually then they just completely fell away in the game. So going to have to fix that for next year. If we have a look at their graph for the season. So, early on, you can see them up there as high as 4th. They then drop out of the playoff places all the way down to 10th, work their way back up to 5th and in the playoffs, staying in the playoffs for much of the middle part of the season. Then they start to fall away again. So last year they kind of fell away a bit earlier in the season, but it looked like, in that period, around 9, 10, 11, it looked like they were, progressing pretty nicely, and maybe they were going to have momentum going into the end, but it didn't work out for them. They drop out of the playoffs, then they're kind of flirting in and out. And then when it came down to it in that final game, they just couldn't produce. So, as I said, good start to the season, but then when they had to deliver in the final round, they were found wanting. They need to take a leaf out of Glasgow's book and work on the mental side of the game if they're going to see progress next year. Next time with the Lions, finished position was 9th. They were in the Challenge Cup. Round of 16, defeat 27-17 against Benetton. Finished 3rd in the South African Shield. And the record was 9 wins, 0 draws, and 9 losses. Highlights for them: 61 points to 19 win against Zebre in round 6. Had Van der Merwe, Horn, and Van Wyk with doubles, and 9 tries in total. Just their attack completely on fire there. Then that 38 points to 14 win away to Connacht in round 12. 6 tries, 4 in the second half, and all after that. Bakanye red card, he really butchers his name, after 70 minutes, as I mentioned in the Connacht one. And a 44 points to 12 win against Leinster in round 14. Horn at Chutuka with doubles, 6 tries altogether. Just really punished Leinster for the team that they sent down. Lowlights, losing 25 points to 10 against the Bulls in round 10. Then that was at home. Also at home, 33 points to 13 defeat against Munster in round 18. And then the Stormers away as well in round 18, 29 points to 24. They had a chance to seal their place in the playoffs, and they just weren't able to do it, in that one. And that's got to be disappointing for them. So let's have a look at their graph for the season. So, they start off kind of in 9th place, then they drop away, and then they climb back up. They get themselves into the playoffs, then they sink down out of it, work their way back up into the playoffs again, sink down again, and then towards the end, looks like they have a bit of momentum in the last few rounds. They get back up to 7th place, but ultimately couldn't deliver against the Stormers and missed out on the playoffs. So, some brilliant performances this year. I thought Hamba was amazing. That guy's a serious talent, but they couldn't secure the points they needed in the run-in, unfortunately. They really did give it a go, though. They put themselves in a great position. And, these guys, they used to be a real force back in the mid-teens in Super Rugby. And, I think URC hasn't seen that level from them yet. And I think we're bound to see, the best of the Lions in the next few years. So kind of, keep an eye on this team. Next, then we have the Ospreys. So finished position was 8th. They made it to the quarterfinal. Lost 23 points to 7 against Munster, but did so well to get to the quarterfinal. Even if they didn't really deliver in that quarterfinal performance, I think can be proud of their season. In Europe, they're in the Challenge Cup. They made it to the quarterfinal of that. Lost 23 points to 13 against Gloucester. They were the winners of the Welsh Shield, and the record was 10 wins, 0 losses, and 0 draws and 8 defeats. Excuse me. Highlights for them: 31 points to 9 win against the Scarlets in round 6. Williams double, and they got a 4-try win out of that as well. Then 27 points to 21 against the Stormers away in South Africa in round 14. That was, really good win for them. And in that final game as well in the regular season, 33 points to 29 against Cardiff in round 18. Battle to the win with a 76-minute penalty try to secure that playoff place. Lowlights, 20 points to 5 defeat against the Dragons, and then 61 points to 24 against the Bulls, and 61 points to 14 against Leinster. So, a few performances where they would have felt like, they didn't really do themselves justice, given the season that they've had as well. But it was a fantastic season. We're going to have a look at their graph. So, lowest that they were in the whole season was 13th, and that was in round 1. You can see they kind of up and down all season. They're there and thereabouts near the playoffs, but never really getting to the point where they look secure in their playoff places either. And you can see, coming back from 11th place at the start of round 17, and then those 2 wins, back-to-back wins, getting them up to 8th place in that playoff place. So amazing from them. They didn't spend that many rounds in the playoff places, as I said, but they were there in the round that really counted. So fantastic season, really delivered in the final 2 rounds to qualify with, they had a single-digit % chance to qualify as well. I think it was something like 2% at some point. And it's great to see the Ospreys on the way back as well. They had, no Champions Cup, unfortunately for them, next year because the Sharks won the Challenge Cup, and would have been great to see how they went in that as well. I think there's more to come from this team. Next time we have Benetton. They finished 7th. Their quarterfinal, they lost to the Bulls, 30 points to 23, but really acquitted themselves well in that game. In Europe, they made it to the Challenge Cup semi-final. Gloucester, 40 points to 23, defeat for them, but a really good run in that competition. Finished 2nd in their Shield, only to Glasgow. Record 11 wins, 1 draw, and 6 defeats. So you can see, this team really is, a very competitive team now. Highlights for them: 20 points to 17 win against the Stormers in round 4. Zanon and Izakor with tries. And then Rhino Smith with a great drop goal in that game as well. 25 points to 24, away win against the Sharks in round 16. Umaga with a late try after Coster got red carded. And then a 31 points to 6 win against Edinburgh in that round 18. Izakor double, 5 tries, pressure situation. And of the 2 teams that were battling out for, that position, they're the ones that delivered. Lowlights: 26 points to 12 defeat against Glasgow in round 5. 37 points to 18 against Leinster in round 10, and then 56 points to 35 against Bulls in round 17. But in fairness, there were some good signs in that one. Like, to go to the Bulls and score 35 points is pretty good. So not too many lowlights really for them in their season. We will have a look at their graph. So you can see there, really up and down for them. Start the season in 8th place. They drop out of the playoffs. Then they worked their way all the way up to 2nd place in the table, but immediately then start falling away. Fell away all the way down to 10th, then worked their way back into the playoff places by peaking there at 5th place in round 14. Well, in the latter stages, they obviously peaked at 2, but then fall out of the playoff places again. But last 2 rounds they deliver, and that was enough to get them through. So really good from them in terms of being able to come back a couple of times during the season, and it was a great start to the season for them, and also then finish well to make the playoffs. And they're a team that are improving every season. And the question now is, can they be real contenders next year? Next time we have Ulster. Finished position was 6th. The quarterfinal was a 43 points to 20 defeat against Leinster. In Europe, they were in the Challenge Cup, having dropped down from the Champions Cup. They lost the quarterfinal 53 points to 14 against Clermont. I think in the round of 16, they pulled off a miraculous game against Montpellier to win 40 points to 17, but they couldn't, replicate that. In the Shield, they finished second in the Irish Shield, so I think, given the season they had, they'll be fairly proud of that. Record was 11 wins, 0 draws and 7 defeats. Highlights: 26 points to 18 against the Bulls in round 2. Stewart and Stockdale tries and then Doak's boot. Then round 9, 22 points to 21 against Leinster. Fast start: Timoney and Stockdale with tries in the first 7 minutes. Timoney with a second try, Cooney penalty, and then they held on for the win. Then round 17, they complete the double over Leinster, 23 points to 21. Herring and Stockdale with tries, and then Cooney's boot getting the rest of the points to them. Lowlights: 33 points to 20, against Glasgow away in round 6. And then round 7, at 24 points to 27, home defeat against Edinburgh. So, not doing so well against the Scottish teams. And then at 22 points to 12, defeat against the Sharks in round 12 as well. So let's have a look at their graph. So you can see, start of the season, they're comfortably within the playoff places. Then they start dropping off, have a couple of dips, and then finally dip outside the playoff places down as far as 10th. And then they have a bounce down at the end of the season, working their way back up to 6th place. So, it felt like, the team really fell apart in the build up to Dan McFarland leaving. But you kind of have to remember that he did well over his entire tenure, but I still feel it was the right decision for him to go then. But he still should get, credit for what he did for Ulster in previous seasons as well. But there were signs last season that there was something a little bit up in that camp as well. Lots of disruption off the field for Ulster this year as well. Like the CEO, or whatever he's called, stepped aside too. And then Richie Murphy, he came in, he steadied his ship. And now it's about how is he going to do now that he's going to have an off season under his belt with his players? Is there going to be a bounce next season from them? Next game with the Stormers, finished position was 5th. Quarterfinal, they lost to Glasgow 27 points to 10. In Europe, they were in the Champions Cup. They went out in the round of 16 very narrowly, 21 points to 22. Defeat at home to La Rochelle. They had beaten La Rochelle narrowly in the pool stages as well, so that was a real tight one there. They finished second in the South African Shield, and record was 12 wins, 0 draws and 6 defeats. Highlights for them: 26 points to 20 against the Bulls in round 8. Duplessis and Nell with tries, Lavoc from the tee, and Willemse with an early drop goal in that one as well. Then 43 points to 21 against Edinburgh in round 12. Zas and Roos doubles, and then Hartzenberg with a hat-trick as well in that one. And then 42 points to 12 against Leinster in round 15. Scored 5 tries. Halland with just an absolutely outrageous dummy for that final try as well. That's just worth going and watching all by itself. Lowlights: 29 points to 9 away to Glasgow in round 3. 31 points to 24 in Cardiff in round 6. 40 points to 22 defeat the Bulls away in round 11. And then that home defeat as well, the Ospreys, 27 points to 21 in round 14. Felt like they left themselves with a lot to do with a poor start to the season, but they did well to not just make the playoffs, but also finish in 5th. And it's the first year that they haven't actually made the final, and feel like, a better start next year and maybe some more momentum, and they'll be back up competing at the sharp end of things in the league next year. So let's have a look at their graph as well. So opening rounds, they actually did well in the couple of opening rounds. They're actually up there in first place after 2 rounds. But then you can see, we talk about a poor start to the season. Yes, 2 wins to start, but then just fell away completely. Almost free fall there, all the way down to 12th place. Then they start working their way back up, and by kind of round 13, they were, secure, I think, in the playoff places. and they were looking for something to maybe, a stumble from the top four. Didn't happen, but they secured that 5th place for themselves. Okay, next then we have the semi-finalists. So first up is Leinster. Position in the league was 3rd. In the semi-final, it lost 25 points to 20 against the Bulls, but that really was an emphatic performance by the Bulls. And that one, in Europe, they made the Champions Cup final. It was 31 points to 22 defeat against Toulouse after extra time in that one. They won their Shield. Their record then was 13 wins, 0 draws and 5 defeats. Highlights for them: 21 points to 16 against Munster in round 6. Gibson Park, Sheehan and Larmour with the tries in that one. Then a 47 points to 14 win against the Bulls. For me, that was their peak in terms of the URC. I think the win against La Rochelle in the knockout stages was their peak for the entire season, but certainly in the URC, this one was their peak in round 13. 7 tries. Van der Fleur with the first 5 tries in that second half as well. And then a 61 points to 14 win against the Ospreys in round 16 really was like a kind of a reaction to a lot of criticism that they're getting. 9 tries and a Larmour hat-trick in that one as well. Lowlights: 43 points to 25 against Glasgow away in round 1. Really did, kind of set the stage, I think, for the rest of their season. Then 44 points to 12 against the Lions away in round 14. And then 23 points to 21 against Ulster away in round 17, where they had a chance to win the game and they just couldn't hold on to it at the end there. They looked at, actually, we look at their, I was going to talk about them, but we look at their graph first of all. So that defeat saw them then 15th place, after round 1, climbed all the way back up to 2nd, then hit 1st in round 5, and then stayed 1st from round 5 to 14. And then from there, they declined. And that was around the time when they had that South African tour that was a disaster for them and ended up finishing in 3rd overall. And the difference between this and other seasons we've seen in the URC is that in the other seasons when Leinster hit 1st place, that was it. Like, they were pulling away from their opposition. But this year, they just were not good enough to be able to do that. So for the season, looked off pace for much of the season, and only a few performances where it felt like they really delivered a performance. And I feel like they finished where they deserve to, both in the league standings and as a losing semi-finalist as well. And I think the increase in the quality in the URC may prompt a rethink to their selection policy for next season. So we'll have to watch this space on that one. Next time we have Munster, so defending champions. Position, they finished 1st in the log. They made it to the semi-final at home. 10 points to 17 defeat against Glasgow. In Europe, Champions Cup, they made around a 16. They lost 24 points to 14 against Northampton. And around that period, they weren't in the best of form. And Northampton had already beaten them at Thomond Park in the pool stages. So the writing was on their wall for that one. I felt finished 3rd in the Irish Shield, which is a bit, I'm not going to say strange, but a turn up for the books, because obviously finishing 1st overall, you feel that they probably would have been the first 2 in the Shield, but Ulster had a fantastic season against the other Irish provinces. Record then was 13 wins, 1 draw and 4 defeats. Highlights: 40 points to 29 against Glasgow, the eventual champions in round 7. 6 tries and a double from Ahern, who really looks like he's going to be a special player for them. Then 27 points to 22 win away against the Bulls in round 14. You have Daly, Snyman, Hodnett and Murray with the tries. First European team to win at Loftus in the URC. Then a 33 points to 13 win against the Lions away as well. So a double win on their South African tour in round 15. 4 tries, including a penalty try. And as I said, did that double on their tour to South Africa. Low lights for them then, that 13 points to all draw against Benetton away in round 2. A 3-9 defeat against Leinster at home in round 8, and a 22-9 defeat against Connacht in the sports ground in round 9. They're the defending champions. Let's look. I keep forgetting that we have to look at their graph first. So in the graph, you can see they're up there near the top at the start of the season. Then they have a bit of a blip in the middle of the season. That was around the time when they were kind of struggling in the Champions Cup as well. So they fell away. The 9th place there. When they're down, or 9th round, there, when they're down at 11th, that was that defeat against Connacht. And from then, they win every single game, in the regular season, at least. Obviously, they lost their semi-final, but the rest of so 9 games on the trot, they reel off in the regular season to climb all the way from 11th to 1st. So, got to give them credit for that. That is a fantastic end to the season. And it looked like they were coming in to the playoffs with momentum, but they were outdone by the better team on the day against Glasgow in that semi-final. So defending champions, they finished the regular season with that 9-game winning streak. As I said, they finished top of the log, outplayed in the semi-final, but no shame in that. I thought it was a fantastic game, and now it's about, can they be competitive in both the URC and the Champions Cup next season. Next game we have the Bulls. So finished second in the regular season, and they were the runners up in the final as well. In Europe, they had a quarter-final in the Champions Cup. Northampton 59-22 against the Bulls. They sent a second team as they prioritised the URC. They got a bit of flack for that as well. And hopefully, I can see why they did it, because the travel arrangements were terrible for that, and also the turnaround time for the next game. But hopefully next season that we can see the best of the Bulls in the Champions Cup. They won the South African Shield. The record was 13 wins, 0 draws and 5 defeats. Highlights for them: 40 points to 22 against the Stormers around 11. Grobbelaar with a double in the bonus point win. Then at 61 points to 24 against the Ospreys in round 15. 9 tries, Aronson and Moody both with doubles. And then the 25 points to 20 semi-final win against Leinster. Houston, Peterson double after getting a yellow card, and just a dominant performance from them. Lowlights: 31 points to 23 defeat against Edinburgh away in round 5. That 47 points to 14 against Leinster in round 13 felt like a bit of an nadir for them, because they were there, like, competing for the top of the league, and it felt like, this could be decisive moment in their season, and they went in and didn't deliver in the game. Then that defeat at home to Munster, 22 points to 27 in round 14, and that was the game after. So they sent that second team to Northampton for the Champions Cup quarter-final in order to keep the first team home to prepare for this, and they lost it. And it feels like they almost hit a Leinster on that, because we've seen Leinster do pretty much exactly the same thing. Now let's have a look at their graph for the year. So you can see they were top of the table in round 1 and 4, and they kind of bounced up and down a little bit, and then you see them kind of honing in, in that area, like 3rd to 4th, they're staying in there, and you see that by the end, there's no way they're going to be knocked out of having at least a home quarter final, and they finished second to make sure they had a home semi-final, ultimately, because of the way things fell, a home final too. So very consistent in the league, and they always seem to put a nice run together as well in the last few rounds to give them a bit of a boost going in to the playoffs. So, some amazing performances from them this year. They just blew some teams out of the water and probably hit top gear the most of any team I've felt in the league this year as well. And most of the time it was their year, when they had the final at Loftus, and I think they can be proud of their efforts in the final as well. It wasn't like they got stomped or anything. They came so close in that one, and I think expect them to be there or thereabouts next year as well. This team are not going to go away. And again, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Champions Cup next year as well. Okay, next then we have Glasgow. Position was 4th in the regular season. Obviously, champions. They won that final 21 points to 16 at Loftus. Fantastic performance from them in there. In Europe, they were in the Champions Cup. They made the round of 16. They lost 28 points to 24 against Harlequins. Hopefully, we see them being more competitive in that next year. Shield, they won the Scottish Shield. Record was 13 wins, 0 draws, and 5 defeats. Highlights, that 43 points to 25 against Leinster in round 1. That 17 points to 10 semi-final win against Munster in the playoffs. And then obviously the 21 points to 16 against the Bulls at Loftus in the final as well to get their hands on the trophy. Lowlights, not too many. 34 points to 26 against Connacht in round 2. Then 40 points to 29 against Munster, but they still scored some decent tries in that one in round 7, and that was away. And then one that maybe they didn't deliver so much was 44 points to 21 against the Lions in round 17, but that was after a really big effort in coming back against the Bulls, I think the week before as well at Loftus. So they're URC champions. Let's see how they went through the year. So you can see the win against Leinster first up put them in 2nd, dropped down to 7th, but then from round 4 on they're in that top 4 and they hit top place in the league a couple of times during the season, but most of the time they were there second or third. Then they get back up to 1st for a couple of rounds, but then they fell away to 4th. And it felt like when they fell away to 4th, they were the one team going into the playoffs, with no real momentum behind them. But then they just absolutely tore it up in those playoffs, and just brought something in terms of at least knockout games that we hadn't seen from this Glasgow team before. So that was brilliant. So they started the season so well. I felt like they didn't take the opportunity to secure top spot, and as I said, they didn't have that momentum going into the playoffs, but boy did they deliver when they were there. And in the last 2 seasons previous to this, they looked like the mental side of the game was a bit of a problem for them, but this year it was there. They had it in spades this year. So whatever they've done to flip that around, that was fantastic from them. They won away in the semi-final and the final to lift the trophy, and they can now. The question is, can they become the first team to defend their title successfully in the URC era? Okay, so that's the end of this one. And, it was a fantastic season. So many teams raising their game, and it just keeps getting better. There is, rumors, or not really rumors, but talk of, talking heads or whatever, of the Welsh teams perhaps leaving to go to combined league with English teams. Personally, I hope that they don't, as I feel like they're part of the history of this league, and Osprey's performance this year as well shows how much better the league is when we have competitive teams from all the nations in there as well. This year was the first year where we had at least one team from each of the nations in the playoffs. And, you have to say congratulations again to Glasgow Warriors, very worthy champions. And, I'm just very pleased with my news jersey. So next, we're going to have, probably tomorrow, a preview of the first test between South Africa and Ireland. So keep an eye out for that one.